Hey everyone. Okay, so today I want to talk about half or a little over half of my top favorites from 2016 of the books that I've read. And I say a little over half because my list consists of about 9 right now, and I still have several books to read between now and the end of the year. I say several, it's about 5, and it's going to be hard fitting those all in 4 days. But anyway, yes, so I'm going to try to fit those in, and so I'm going to wait and do the second half of my favorites after the new year. But anyway, I have a list of about 9 right now, and I'm pretty sure the reason why I say that I'm going to wait to do the second half is because I'm pretty sure most of the books that I am trying to read between now and the end of the year are also going to be on my favorites list. Some based on what I've read of them so far, some based on just a feeling of how much I'm going to love them. So, yes. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the books that I do have on this list so far. First, I'll talk about a couple that I don't actually have with me because they were library checkouts, and that is, the first one is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, and I should say these aren't in any particular order except for, I do have, I'm going to do top so far, that are, it's like the top 1, I think. I will save that, but anyway, the rest I'll talk about in any order. So, Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I know that this is an incredibly controversial book for some people. It's an incredibly controversial book, it's an incredibly controversial film for a lot of different people. Some people think that it's completely horrendous, and I can understand a bit how they would think that. I personally didn't feel that way because I read different, I guess different articles, maybe not different articles, but I read an article where Jojo Moyes was talking about the fact that when she was writing the book, it's really supposed to be 2 sides of this story, or I should say 2 sides of this issue that make up an entire story, where at the end of the book, the narration that she writes, it's not supposed to come out on either side as far as her being on any particular side of this issue, regardless of how the book ends. And yeah, I just, so I, based on that, I was okay going into it because I knew what the topic was going into it, and I knew it was going to be very difficult to read, and yeah, it definitely was, but the way that book made me feel was just incredible. I was laughing seconds after I had been crying. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me incredibly angry, incredibly happy. There were so many things about that book that I loved so much. I thought it was incredibly well written, and I just hope that if you have a different opinion about it, I really hope you don't get mad at me for liking it and putting it on this list. I just really, I don't want to say I enjoyed the subject matter, because that's not, it's a very serious subject, and it's not something that anyone should say enjoy, but I thought the writing was beautiful. I thought the characters were beautiful. Some of the characters I really hated, but I feel like you were supposed to. And yeah, it was very, very moving for me, and especially because I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook is the narration of the UK version, and I think that's the only audiobook available, is the narration of the UK version, which I actually like more than the American one, because I checked out the American physical copy while I was listening to the UK audio, and it was very disorienting, and it was really pissing me off that the American publishers were cutting out certain English words because they were like, oh, Americans won't understand this. And I'm like, yeah, we will, actually. Because any kid who read Harry Potter when they were little understands that trainers are sneakers. And they also cut out, what's her name? Lou offers her granddad a Ribena, which is a type of drink, and in the context, you understand that it is a beverage, but apparently American publishers don't think that anyone would get that who is American, so they cut that out, and they cut out a Doctor Who reference, which really bugged me, because Doctor Who is my favorite show pretty much ever. But anyway, so I stopped reading the American version, only listened to the UK version, completely loved it. It was like a full cast kind of audio, so it was really, really amazingly well done. So, yes, I love that book. But I do understand that it is controversial and has issues. Next one that I don't have with me, and I think I don't have 3, but anyway, the next one is Peter and Alice by John Logan. This is it's a play that John Logan wrote. Basically, there was a day in, I believe, 1926, I want to say, where Peter Llewellyn Davies, who was the real-life inspiration for Peter Pan by James Barrie, and Alice Little Hargreaves, I think is how you say her last name, who was Charles Dodgson, aka Lewis Carroll's inspiration for Alice in Wonderland. Anyway, they met on a day in July of 1926 when Alice Little Hargreaves was dedicating the Alice in Wonderland exhibition in London, and Peter Llewellyn Davies was there, and he, I believe, was in his 30s and she was in her 80s when they met, and John Logan took that real-life event and thought, I wonder what they said to each other, and created this entire play about what their conversation would be like, talking to each other and both being idols for children and both being always mixed up with their characters, meaning like people meet them and think that they are their characters when they're not. And it was incredibly beautiful. It was incredibly dark at times and incredibly sad and depressing at times. There was one point where I actually had to put the play down and leave it for a few days and then go back to it, because it was a point where I just didn't want to feel that depressed. But it was beautiful and amazing, and I am incredibly sad now that I wasn't ever able to see the live production of the play, because Judi Dench played Alice and Ben Whishaw played Peter, and also Ruby Benthal, I can't think how you say her name, but she played the character of Alice. And so, yeah, I just thought the cast was amazing, and I was really sad that I couldn't see it, but I did see little clips of it, so I did get to see little scenes, so then I could imagine and hear the actors saying it in my head, so that was great. So yeah, I would highly recommend reading it for anyone who is the least bit interested in Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. And obviously we can't see the play anymore because it's no longer showing, unfortunately. I really wish that it had ended up going to Broadway or something, but that didn't happen. But anyway, so it was amazing. Okay, and next, I guess I'll talk about these two together. One of which I don't have, and that is The Warden and Barchester Towers, both by Anthony Trollope. And these are the first two books in his Barsetshire series. And The Warden, I read both of these over the summer. I read The Warden in July, and I read Barchester Towers in August. And The Warden, I really loved. That was the first one that really made me fall in love with his writing. At first I was like slightly bored with it, but then it was just such an amazing, the way he writes was just beautiful. He takes like historical and mythological and just all these cultural allusions and puts them in his stories, and that's what really made me completely fall in love with his writing. And I ended up completely loving all of the characters in The Warden except for one. There was only one character who I really didn't enjoy and wasn't rooting for. And the interesting thing is that then in Barchester Towers, that same character who I wasn't rooting for in The Warden ended up being a much lesser villain, shall we say. Like, in this, there's a guy who is so much worse than the guy from The Warden. So I ended up feeling bad for that guy at some points during this book. But anyway, we continue on with the same characters in Barchester Towers as in The Warden. But this one, I would just say, is much richer, and it leaves off a lot of the church politics that The Warden has. It definitely still has church politics, but I feel like this one is much more about the characters rather than the church politic part. So yeah, I loved the characters in this. I loved a very specific love story in this, and I also loved the love story that happens in The Warden as well. So yeah, these were just both amazing, and I would highly, highly recommend starting this series. And if you have trouble getting through The Warden, because I know some people do, I would say just go ahead and push through to get to this one. Because I, for example, wasn't liking it for like the first 50 pages or so, and it's a pretty short book. But then I ended up completely loving it. But even if you have trouble with the whole thing, definitely read it just to get to Barchester Towers, because oh my gosh, it's so, so good. And I really need to put Dr. Thorne on my January list, I think. We'll have to see. But anyway, these are both amazing. So yes, Barchester Towers and The Warden. And I realize I've been talking for about 13 minutes now, so I'm actually going to cut this maybe into 3 or 4 videos. So those are my first, three favorites? I only talked about 3 books, I think, but anyway, yeah. Oh no, 4. I talked about 4 because I talked about Peter and Alice as well. So yes, those are 4 of my favorites from 2016, and I will make another video, part 2, talking about some other favorites. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.